Implicitly and by all who benefit. So it's about fiscal discipline, power sector stability, and ending the cycle of arrears, liquidity crisis, and distortions that have dogged Nigeria's electricity market for years. So this morning, we'll be asking, what does this mean for states? How will they be paying? And are we still protected even as Nigerians? Everything subsidy is gone. According to Mr. President in 2023, few subsidies gone, but everything subsidy is going. But this is Moneyline with Nancy. It's the Friday edition, like I mentioned. Let's quickly get into the news. We'll begin by telling you that Nigeria has recovered an estimated 6 trillion naira in just 9 months from the full downstream regulation, and this is according to the NMDPRA. Speaking at the Nigeria International Energy Summit, the agency said reduced import dependence, naira-denominated fuel sales, and higher gas utilization have conserved foreign exchange and cut losses. Officials in the sector say that it is now shifting from a fiscal drain to a potential FX earner, with domestic refining and gas positioned as key investment drivers. Edo State government and NNPC Limited are moving to establish a 10,000 barrels per day condensate refinery, targeting completion within 3 years. The project, spanning 2 local government areas, is expected to supply fuel to Edo and neighboring states while reducing logistics cost and import exposure. The state government says the refinery will create jobs, support industrial growth, and strengthen local energy security as Nigeria pushes deeper into domestic processing. Let's move over to another state. Lagos State has approved more than 140 billion naira for social protection, targeting vulnerable households through over 90 interventions across multiple agencies. Lagos State officials say spending aligns with a broader push for inclusive growth and shared prosperity at a time of rising living costs. The government describes the programs as central to its development agenda, with social investment now a core line item and the state's fiscal strategy. That's a good one there, because we're even talking about it on, was it on Tuesday? Oh, no, we're talking about it even yesterday. Shewoni Bide was on the program. We're talking about why should the federal government be doing social protection. So a good one from Lagos State. They're doing social protection for its citizens. Other states should follow suit. Let's move ahead. Nigeria's equity market extended its rally, with the all-share index closing above 170,000 points for the first time, driven by strong buying in energy and industrial stocks. Market capitalization rose to over 409 trillion naira. Trading volumes and values increased. Liquidity conditions and yield compression in fixed income are pushing investors further into equities, despite selective profit-taking in insurance and small cap names. All right. I think we'll take a break now if we can. Let's quickly take a break, and when we return, it will be time for us to get you into the market. Still ahead, we'll be talking about the electricity subsidy cost. The federal government is saying, guys, we all share this. For that and more, we'll come back and discuss, of course, after the break. But do stay with us. We'll be right back.
On Moneyline with Nancy.
On tracking the open treasury platform of government was 156 billion. In
156 billion.
So a chunk of those projects are poorly funded.
Which is not even up to 10%.
A lot of the projects that are funded are the micro project, the 10 million, the 20 million, but the major large projects like dams, like projects in the Ministry of Niger Delta, a chunk of those ones were not funded. And you also get that some of the projects were also funded, but poorly executed. I mean, if you're also funding projects, do them well. And we had these statistics that show that some states like Katsina had their projects well delivered, well done in 2024, 2025. But some states also didn't get proper delivery, like Benue State. And this means that you need to ask questions from the lawmakers in those environments. Why are projects in your constituencies not well delivered or not done at all? On tracking the open treasury platform of government was 156 billion. In
156 billion.
So a chunk of those projects are poorly funded.
Which is not even up to 10%.
A lot of the projects that are funded are the micro project, the 10 million, the 20 million, but the major large projects like dams, like projects in the Ministry of Niger Delta, a chunk of those ones were not funded. And you also get that some of the projects were also funded, but poorly executed. I mean, if you're also funding projects, do them well. And we had these statistics that show that some states like Katsina had their projects well delivered, well done in 2024, 2025.
This is Moneyline with Nancy, and this is a program that sets your business day for you.
Inflation played a 9-1 on us, and the cost of doing business and the cost of living crisis persists. But we can win. We can win on those two things.
We need to work on our infrastructure, maintain what we have, and add new infrastructure. Isn't it interesting to you that it still costs less to ship something from China to Lagos than from Dakar to Nigeria?
Resilience is not only bouncing back when there is crisis or shocks. Resilience is about the ability to adapt, the ability to innovate, the ability to thrive in a VUCA world, which is basically a world that we have a lot of vulnerabilities, a world that we have a lot of uncertainty.
Thank you, Nancy. You've been doing a great job in trying to educate Nigerians, and we must appreciate you for that.
Everybody tells me you're the gold standard in this business, yeah.
Well, Nancy Naji, be the best you can be, and be that change that you want. Welcome to Moneyline with Nancy. Of course, this is the trusted source for in-depth conversation on finance, the economy, and everything in between. I am Nancy Naji.
The Abuja Treaty foresees that we have to adopt as Africa a linear model of integration of our market. We foresee, in terms of the agreement, that Africa one day will be a customs union.
That's a great question, Nancy. So you have basically two pillars here. There are things that you must do now because you are in an emergency situation. You have to provide helping hands to those who cannot cope anymore. The extreme poor people who cannot really afford to have food on their table. There is no time to wait for the perfect plan for them. You need to provide support immediately for them.
If the world wants to be more resilient, they need to deconcentrate supply chains and locate them. And why not relocate them in those regions that didn't have them in the first place? If you want to build resilience, it's not concentrating them again in another country.
How can you move your goods from point A to point B and demand? So it's also us educating our businesses, advocacy, the courage to trade, the courage. Nigerians have it.
I am Nancy Naji, be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. Let's bring you this report, and this report we actually share the frustration of Nigerians regarding the ongoing power crisis in the country. Why we haven't yet solved this problem? Because it's taking a heavy toll on businesses as well as daily lives in the country. Many Nigerians that we spoke to did share their frustrations. Take a listen, and when we come back, it will be time for us to get into the power conversation also, but from the aspect of electricity subsidy. My guest will be joining me, George Etomi, Director at West Power and Gas.
Nigeria's electricity crisis remains one of the country's biggest obstacles to growth. Despite decades of reforms and huge investments, millions of households and businesses still depend on generators as blackouts continue nationwide. In 2025, the federal government introduced new policies to improve power supply. The new Electricity Act now allows states to generate, transmit, and distribute their own electricity. Experts believe this decentralization could create competition and push service providers to perform better. But for many Nigerians, the reality is unchanged. Electricity tariffs have gone up following subsidy cuts, yet supply remains erratic in many communities. To stabilize the sector, the government adopted the National Integrated Electricity Policy, a long-term guide for the industry. It also approved payments to clear long-standing debts owed to power generation and gas companies. This move is expected to unlock more investment and reduce supply disruptions. Infrastructure upgrades are ongoing. Over 1 million new meters are being deployed to reduce estimated billing and improve transparency. Transmission lines and equipment are also being upgraded, while investments in renewable and off-grid solutions continues to grow, especially for rural and undeserved areas.
Every nation that must strive must have a very cool foundation with, power and its supplies. And at the same time, we talk about water, but concentrating on electricity, I think power as a source is one thing that drives the economy, to the highest point of its glory. Talking about our existence, that everything, goes around the electricity, around power. Well-developed nations, they've even left the type of electricity we are consuming now. Some has gone solar. And while we even go around the solar, at least they should even make it affordable for common citizens that are working so hard to help their business flourish.
The effect of power electricity to business in Nigeria, I won't say it's bad and I won't say it's good, because looking at the Nigerian electricity, is one-man business. Is more like a one-man business now, because maybe the time you wanted to use the electricity, there is no power supply. And so because of that, so many people decided to go for a generator, lister, something that they can use to improvise the electricity supply. And talking about the way forward, I think what government should do is that to make the power supply more standard. In some civilized country, before the power outage, they used to announce it on radio or any means so that people will know that, okay, from this time to this time, there won't be electricity. But if Nigeria can adapt to that kind of style, it will help boost business as well.
Even that, these natural things, especially the tiger nut, which is one of my major products, needs to be refrigerated. So one of the major challenge I'm having is lack of stable electricity, power supply, because it needs to be refrigerated all the time. But given the epileptic power supply in Nigeria, that has been a very big challenge for me.
For small businesses, the struggle is still heavy. Many traders and manufacturers spend a large part of their income on fuel and generator maintenance. This extra cost reduces profits and limits business expansion. Electricity is the backbone of economic progress. Until Nigeria achieves reliable and stable power, the dream of sustainable national development will remain out of reach.
Welcome to Moneyline with Nancy. Of course, this is the trusted source for in-depth conversation on finance, the economy, and everything in between. I am Nancy Naji.
The Abuja Treaty foresees that we have to adopt as Africa a linear model of integration of our market. We foresee, in terms of the agreement, that Africa one day will be a customs union.
That's a great question, Nancy. So you have basically two pillars here. There are things that you must do now because you are in an emergency situation. You have to provide helping hands to those who cannot cope anymore. The extreme poor people who cannot really afford to have food on their table. There is no time to wait for the perfect plan for them. You need to provide support immediately for them.
If the world wants to be more resilient, they need to deconcentrate supply chains and locate them. And why not? Relocate them in those regions that didn't have them in the first place. If you want to build resilience, it's not concentrating them again in another country.
How can you move your goods from point A to point B and demand? So it's also us educating our businesses, advocacy, the courage to trade, the courage. Nigerians have it.
I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. All right, welcome back. Judge Tommy joins me now as the director at West Power and Gas. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Nancy.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, too. Good to see you, sir. I hope you can hear me and you can see me.
I can see you. I can hear you.
Fantastic. Where do we start from now? We had a report earlier. Of course, my team went to the streets to get the opinions of Nigerians. Power is one thing that is frustrating us, individually as well as businesses. You're seeing a lot of people even go to alternative power supply or renewables now, and that is not even cheap. Explain to us, perhaps in clear terms, explain to those watching, our audience right now, our viewers, what this electricity subsidy means, and why do you think the federal government is taking that decision right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Most of the guys you interviewed were spot on. You can see that electricity evokes such emotion because it directly affects the well-being, not just in business terms, but the well-being of I call it the happiness quotient. So you can understand why people are so highly emotive when they're discussing it. Now, let's look at the origins of power, and that's where the problem was situated, and then we move up. When power was initially discovered in Nigeria and was being used, it was provided more as a social service. There was really no intention, as it were, to generate revenue for it. So they simply generated and gave to people. But then you had very few population, and at that time, the industrial base wasn't as wide as it was. And don't forget, this was not just power. It cut across other industries like telecommunications, banking. It was a rather tight market. But as our population started to grow, it became extremely necessary for us to totally rejig the system to ensure that we start attracting investments, which government alone wasn't going to take. It was because these major industries were government monopolies that we didn't have the efficiency that would ordinarily have gone with them. And so we started these massive privatization programs across board. And we saw banking move from what the tally number days to what it is today. We saw telephony move from 400,000 functional lines to nearly 200 million. And now we're looking at the power sector. In my opinion, the reforms in the power sector should have preceded these other two, because almost every industry runs on power. But put it this way, we got onto the game late, and here we are. So it's only 13 years ago, in 2013, that steps were taken to then privatize. And in doing so, you then needed to change a lot of these habits. For a product that had been provided as a social service, even the consumers just got used to not paying for it. So when, at the point of privatization, the promise was that government would provide cost-reflective tariffs, it was a shock to the system of many consumers. And then because power is also highly political, whenever it was time for those tariff adjustments to be made, the government would put back. We saw that immediately after the privatization in November of 2013, leading to the 2014 elections, the administration asked that power tariffs be brought down. Obviously, it was an election ploy, but that was bad for the system. It was bad for investor confidence. It was a betrayal of the entire value chain, because it's a value chain that starts from gas, which is the major source of fuel for the generating plants. Then it goes to the generating companies. Then it goes through transmission, and then it goes finally to distribution. The distribution companies are the ones that collect the revenue, which, if there was a match between the cost and the collection, would actually serve and pay for this entire cost. But that's not what we've seen. When at the distribution points, you play with the tariffs. what then simply happens is that you are selling a product at below its cost. And the natural thing is that somebody somewhere has to bear that. And that is the subsidy we're talking about. And that subsidy will continue, the government continued to bear until it could no longer bear it. And what happened was that come COVID 2020, if you recall, we put the lights on, nobody was working, everybody was at home. So even for the government that was initially managing subsidies, COVID just knocked everybody overboard. And so the first reaction after COVID was to double tariffs. And again, in terms of tactics and technique, I had problems with that, because if somebody was paying, let me say, 20K for electricity per month, and it suddenly goes up to 40, you don't give him time to plan and to rework his system. So it created tariff shocks. And what tariff shocks do to many consumers, as we found out, is that they bypass their meters. So energy theft is a major reason why distribution companies are unable to get sufficient funds to feed the market. Meanwhile, as the tariffs don't make up for consumption, up the value chain, up to the producers, gas cos and gencos, they don't get paid. So the federal government stepped in, and over the years, they've been paying these. But as you know, it's a continuing subsidy. It's not as if you pay it once and it ends. It continues to build. And then it's not been helped by the economic downturn that followed the global recession. We had to also take off tariff subsidies from petroleum products. Inflation came, the naira lost massive value. So all this just translated to huge debt. So even the federal government, no matter how much might they have, is really under this burden, and which is why they've now come to tell states, hey, guys, we've got to share this burden, because we all are part of this whole thing. And this is the game changer that you are seeing.
I wonder how it will change the game, whether it will change the game from worst to worst, because we were not even in the bad zone earlier on. I think, Mr. Tommy, you agree that there shouldn't be subsidy, and for those of you that are power stakeholders, you agree there shouldn't be subsidy at all in the sector?
Well, let me tell you something.
Okay, sir, just hold on and let me situate my point. There are some countries, even around the world that still offer electricity, electricity subsidies to their citizens. There are some that even offer to their elderly ones, the senior citizens. I think even Burkina Faso, if I'm not mistaken, is one of those countries. Countries like Kuwait, countries, I can name it. I think even Iran. So these are countries that also have the same kind of resources that we have. And I can mention at the beginning of the program, Mr. President said subsidy is gone in 2023. Few subsidies gone. All the subsidies are going. So Nigerians at this point do not even have any semblance of government, that government is doing something for us. See our security situation, poor roads, no health care. Was it yesterday or so that I was seeing something? The whole of Kwara State, no MRI, not one single MRI machine in the whole of Kwara State. So what then should Nigerians then get that, oh, we even have a working government? I hope you understand. That's why I needed to situate.
I see where you're coming from.
Yes.
In fact, you took the words off me. I was just going to say that there's absolutely no region where you do not subsidize electricity.
Okay.
Because by the very nature of electricity, by the time it is generated and then transmitted, there will always be something that's lost. Those are called technical losses. And that loss must be borne by somebody. So what you need to do is to reduce the burden of the subsidy to the barest minimum. That is the aim. And that is why the measure of how well a distribution company is doing, it is ability to reduce what they call the ATC and C losses, the aggregate, technical, commercial, and collection losses. The more you get them lower, the better you function as a distribution company. So this is for starters. But then you mentioned other countries that are doing well. Yeah, it all comes to planning. We remember this is the same country when at some point we said we had so much money we didn't know what to do with it. Those were the times for us to have built all the infrastructure that was required. Yeah, that we missed a lot of time because the major problem in the power sector today is that the infrastructure is very antiquated. It's very weak. Your transmission lines cannot take more than 5,000 megawatts. And I stand to be corrected by anybody. Because in the inception of the privatization, one of the promises made to the investors was that they would give them a minimum of 5,000 megawatts per day. That never happened. And anytime they try to push the grid to take more than that, there's a disturbance. It's like having built a road to 2-lane road or 4-lane road, and you just leave it there for 30, 40 years. Meanwhile, the users have quadrupled their times 10, and they're using the same road. There's simply no way you're not going to get congestion. So it's something similar. So we had hoped that investments would have been made in transmission, and those are humongous investments. That wasn't done. So we now have a situation where you've privatized the generating segment, you've privatized distribution, but the middleman transmission is still with the government with all its vagaries. So today, the generating companies have managed to ramp up our generating ability to about 13,000 megawatts. But out of that 13 megawatts, through some of these things I've mentioned to you, they can't take out more than 5. And when they push out 5, it gets to the discos. Most of the distribution networks, too, are also old. They need to be totally overhauled. So there is a question of infrastructure, and it needs to be done. But now let me tell you something. It's not all a story of hopelessness. This is the same country, if you recall. You went to line up with a bank to get your money. They will give you tally number and all that. If anybody told you today that banking would be what it is today, you would have said no.
Exactly.
But it is where it is. Same thing with telephones. Remember.
But it seems that it seems that the financial sector or the financial system in the country does better than every other sector. Or it moves with speed and efficiency. Like I was at a Yaga Africa roundtable, was it last week or so, when they were talking about elections. So I was brought in there to talk about economic governance. What you just said now just reminded me about it. And I said, for example, we're in a country whereby you get into a bank, your ATM card expires today, you get into a bank and you get that ATM card today in the same country. Yet, in the same country, you will be going for, is it a voter's card registration, and the bank card has a chip. And the same country, you cannot adopt and or even go to the banks and say, guys, what are you people doing that we are not getting right here? So and the political people, even I asked that question that day, nobody answered me because there was no answer. So I'm just bringing that in here when you talked about even the financial guys. It's not that it's not that we should praise them totally, but we'll see some kind of changes in that sector, and it changes very fast.
Yeah, okay, Nancy, the reason I gave that is just it's a message of hope. That from almost ground zero, we got banking to where it is.
Where it is, yes.
Telephones, something as well to where it is. And I'm just saying that, and this has been done lightly by Nigerians. But this is also not to say that those reforms didn't have their own challenges. There were turmoils. Remember, there were failed banks, tribunals, they jailed people, they rejigged, they recapitalized. There's always a journey to these things. But those journeys started a long time ago. Power is only 13 years. That's why there is this seeming difference. And unfortunately, the population has grown much bigger. Economic activities have improved and everything. And if you see what it costs the average Nigerian to self-generate, you'll understand why we must be in a hurry to fix the power sector. Because people keep saying, oh, tariffs and tariffs and tariffs. I know Nigerians, if they see a product and it's worth their while, they will pay for it. And then once you pay for a product, it means there's liquidity in the system. If there's liquidity, it will attract more investments. More investments will bring about competition. Competition will crash prices again. That's what we saw in telecoms. And all that. When you in the initial days to get a SIM card was 50K, handset was 250K. Today they are begging you with those things. That's the power of competition. And so that brings me to the role of the states. Because for any reform to start, you must look at the legal and regulatory environment. The law has now allowed states to participate in the full value chain.
Okay.
Which means states can now generate, transmit, and distribute electricity. And what this government is doing now by saying we're no longer buying that subsidy is a wake-up call to states. So states must now go back, look at what I call their comparative areas of advantage, and begin to see how they can generate power that can be embedded into the discourse that serve them. Take Enugu State, for example, with all the coal they have in Enugu. Coal is a source of fuel.
Yes.
I don't see why they shouldn't go back to that and see how they can add that to whatever they get from either the grid or solar. Those states that have oil and gas, the gas is the feedstock for most of your generating sets. Hydro, most of the northern states have hydro. Then you also have solar. So what this call is about is that states just put on your thinking cap and then go back. The day the honeymoon is simply over.
Do you think, okay.
It's simply over. It is either and what I can see going on, by the way, you know Abia State is almost totally off the grid, thanks to what Geometric did with the
state government.
Yeah, with the support. So when we're going on these arguments by on and off, they don't know what you're talking about. Initially, the tariffs looked high. But when people saw that they didn't need their generators anymore, they didn't need to do alternative whatever, the savings they made from that made it affordable for them to pay those tariffs. And that's why I say, if Nigerians see power, they will pay. And it just breaks my heart to see that the average Nigerian owns a generator, owns solar, is with grid. He's just so distracted. And look at what about industries. Almost industries spend about 40% of their overhead costs on self-generation. That shouldn't be. So, but the picture that emerges here is that there's a lot of business to do in this area.
Okay.
And now that the government is the federal government is hands off and going down to states, states must look at it. But let me warn. The subsidy will continue for a while because, like we've just said, subsidy is heavily political. Because if you just take it off in one fell swoop, heaven help you at the next elections. But so what you must do is to come up with robust planning where there's a clear sight between the investments you seek to attract and the revenue that will come for it. And bear that burden for a while until it slowly pays off for itself. And what does that mean for many of the state governments? Please, you have to reorder your priorities. All this profligate spending we see, government overheads and co have to now be redirected. Because let's think about it. Electricity is the driver of economic activities. And we want to diversify this economy. We must get electricity right. There's absolutely no way you can run away from it.
I hope that the state governments can actually do that. Because like we both know, I think in 2023, that's the Electricity Act deregulated the value chain. States can now generate, they can transmit, they can also distribute. And I think we've seen about 18 states now taking advantage of that value chain. Lagos, you mentioned, Abia, I know, Anambra, I think Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta. I think Imo states also, Ondo, Osun, Ekiti. I can't name all the 18, but perhaps I'm close to 10, off the cuff of my head. But what does this really now mean for states? if we take a look at their finances, just like you said, that they need to prioritize. And we've seen that these states have been getting surpluses, as it were, as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy. Even as majority of the state governors have also told me that inflation has eaten into it, that we shouldn't also think they are getting much more naira, or more money, that the naira has been devalued. So the naira is buying less things, as it were. But whatever it is, this is the highest on record, the highest naira they've gotten on record. So where does it leave state finances moving forward? Because with this from the federal government, perhaps they will be deducting from FAC directly.
Well,
and what will happen to even poorer states? Let me put it that way, or not well-to-do states?
Nancy, it's all about the ability to attract private capital. The states don't have to directly use their resources for this. And you just simply need to make your environment attractive for investors. Right now, because of this bottle feeding mentality we have, states run cap in hand every month for revenue. Many states are not thinking outside the box. Let them start with the laws. Let them start with the regulations. Let them make the business environment attractive. Let them give incentives. Businesses will come. And when those businesses come, you ensure that they stay. Right now, there's so much waste in government, like me and you know. How do you explain? You say you remove subsidies from petroleum products, you still see 50-man convoys running back and forth. The governors are taking private jets back and forth. The optics isn't just good at all. And that's why I believe what has just happened will be a wake-up call for states. Secondly, states can actually, they can work together. I know the Southeast states are coming to see how they can form a regional group for the purpose of keying into electricity generation. I encourage that with other states as well, so that you don't have to each of you repeat the same thing in your respective states. You can pool resources together, share costs, and whatever. But what's critical is how do you get the private sector to come in and make them stay? That would be the key challenge. And for me, as far as I'm concerned, there's no going back, because the federal government simply just can't continue with this burden. That's what they've shown you. They've taken the can as far as they can carry it. And now the burden goes back to the state. About poorer states.
Okay, go ahead, yes.
You talked about poorer states.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, there's going to be some challenges with states that can afford some of these things and those that cannot afford. And that's why I suggested that states can actually come together, pool resources and share costs. It's like having 4 of you in a street. Instead of each one of you doing a borehole for your house, you can all agree to pool resources and put one borehole that will serve everybody. That sort of mentality is what states should begin to adapt. And the truth is, the federal government doesn't have any money at all. Even when they started these FAC deductions, I predict that states will be going back to beg for one sort of support or the other. And the issue is that if you support one state, you don't support the other,
you're in trouble.
It's a problem. So everybody must be on their toes.
Yes.
It's a game changer. There's a new game in town, Nancy.
But if you're saying there's a new game in town, I wonder how the president, yes, because it still goes back to him, how he will be able to withstand it. If the governors come together and say, Mr. President, no. Don't you think that Mr. President would budge, especially as we're in a pre-election year? Then number 2 question is, I know that there's a PCAF, that's a Power Consumers Assistance Fund. Yes. Yeah. So much acronyms in the power sector. So what?
A new television program is an engaging program designed to inform, inspire, and challenge perspectives. The Teacher celebrates and unbundles the challenges teachers face through documentary and engaging discussions with stakeholders in the educational sector of our society. The Teacher Show. Here, meaningful conversations spark learning beyond the classroom.
IT, sharing the African experience.
Faith Ogbonnaya is 19 years old, hails from Onitsha local government area of Ebonyi State. Faith Ogbonnaya has been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, which requires urgent kidney transplant, and is in need of 30 million naira only for her treatment. For your kind assistance towards Faith Ogbonnaya, kindly donate into the following account details. Account name, Mary Nneka Ogbonnaya. Bank, UBA. Account number, 1023689999. Faith Ogbonnaya needs the sum of 30 million naira only for her treatment.